take a walk with me, not like you used to do. Do something different and put yourself in other people's shoes. Open up your mind and open up your eyes and change your direction, change your perspective.
Welcome into Other People's Shoes. As you know, I am your host, Neil Matthews. Thank you so much for joining me this week. Super excited about our guest today. But before we get to her, just want to remind you of this. If you haven't done so already, please jump right over to opspodcast.com. Feel free to leave us a review there. Maybe even drop us a little voicemail if you choose. And of course, follow us on the social medias at OPS Podcast Show under Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. We would, of course, love to connect with you there. Speaking of connecting with people, my guest today, let's talk about her for a moment. She suffered an intracerebral hemorrhagic stroke at the age of 29, then developed epilepsy due to the stroke. She is now a walking miracle, and in fact, she feels called to share her story of faith and perseverance and to encourage others. Help me welcome her in from the great state of Arizona, Lori. Lori, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Neil. Thank you so much for having me on here. I appreciate it very much.
Absolutely. It is our pleasure. Lori, I'm excited about you. I read a little bit about you and kind of what you're about. And let me tell you, from a human being to a human being, what you guys have walked through, and I say you guys, you and your husband and your family, what you guys have walked through this last really like 5-10 years has been quite the journey, would you say?
It has. My husband and I have been on quite the journey. It started actually back in 2003 when I suffered a massive stroke at age 29, and it's continued. God carried us through lots of challenges, and our faith and perseverance definitely been the key to it all. That's for sure.
I want to hear more about that. So we're going to get into that. And again, thank you for giving us some moments today. Really appreciate it. So you are, in fact, in the AZ state, right? Arizona. There actually is an Arizona, right?
There is an Arizona. You are correct, and I'm here. So definitely.
That goes back to a song. There is no Arizona. There is no Grand Canyon. I don't know. It's a country song, so I don't know. You can look at that and listen to that maybe later at your convenience. I actually listened to the other day, and I was like, I really want to go to Arizona after hearing this song.
Well, you are welcome anytime. Just don't come in July. It is very, very hot in July. We moved from Minnesota to Arizona, and my husband and I always talk about at least we don't have to shovel the heat. That's the good news. It gets very hot though, so if you're going to come visit, don't come in July.
Well, that's good to know. Don't come in July. I will make a note of that. We'll put our team on that to make sure we never book time in July. But Lori, I love to lead off every show with this question, and that's this. Lori, what style of shoe do you love to wear?
You know, when I had my stroke, I only could wear tennis shoes. So I started out wearing lots and lots of tennis shoes. And so I was a New Balance girl. I have expanded to all sorts of shoes now, but I really, if I have to wear tennis shoes, I like New Balance or Fila. And I usually either wear black or white, depending on the outfit. Luckily, as my recovery, and we'll get into recovery, I know, as we talk today, but as I've recovered, luckily I've expanded into boots and other type of variety. But definitely tennis shoes, I usually stick with New Balance or Fila, and usually it's black or white.
I love that. We haven't had Fila yet, so we might have to put you in some Filas today because nobody has said Fila. So I like that.
Really?
Nobody. You're the first
Yes.
for Filas. So there we go. New Balance we get because I always trash on New Balance because, just not a New Balance guy. Listen, okay, stop with the fan mail for New Balance. I'm not a fan of New Balance. I had one pair one time and they ripped, and that made me not a fan of them anymore.
Well, I'm glad I'm in your good graces with Fila then.
Yeah, I like Fila. We can get around Fila for sure.
All right, good.
So, Lori, getting into you and what you're all about, I want to just, if you can, the best you can, how did your husband react to your stroke?
I have an incredibly amazing, godly, wonderful husband. We've been married almost 24 years. March 28th will be our 24th wedding anniversary. We have a very strong faith. We're both Christians, and I think God put us together for a reason. I graduated from the University of Texas in Austin and then moved to Oklahoma. I was very career-oriented. Most of my college friends stayed in Texas, and I moved to Oklahoma for a career in the petroleum industry. And like I said, I was very career-focused. Job job transferred me to Minnesota 6 months later. And I reference in my book, my life, if anybody's ever seen the movie New in Town, is like New in Town. In fact, that I went to Minnesota only for my career. I knew nothing about Minnesota, hated it from the minute I got there because it was so cold. I had never seen so much snow and been in so much blizzard weather. It was January 1997, and it was just frigid cold. No one told me never to go through a car wash because your locks will freeze until I went through a car wash, and your locks really do freeze. And I went to church to find friends because I was a Christian. I thought, well, that's the best place to find friends. And that's where I met my husband. And that's when I knew that I actually did not go to Minnesota for my job, went to Minnesota to meet my godly husband. And my husband actually grew up in a household where his mom had been diagnosed with cancer at an early age, and she battled cancer for 16 years. So he grew up in an environment watching his dad take care of his mom. I know that God placed me with my husband as my mate because at the time when we got married, we didn't know that I was going to have medical challenges in my future, but God did. As we heard into our story and our future, and I did have medical challenges along the way and had a stroke at age 29. God already knew that. And so he placed my husband in my life, I know, to be able to handle that because he grew up watching his dad take care of his mom. So he handled it with much, much grace. I think we've been able to handle the challenges the way we have because of that.
Have you ever thought about life without him and what that would look like?
Oh, it would have been incredibly lonely. And I think it would have been incredibly hard because he is my rock. He always has been. And we're very complimentary of each other in the fact that I'm much more extroverted and he's much more introverted. And if the stroke could have happened, we joke, if the stroke could have happened to either one of us, it actually would have been better for it to have happened to him, not me, in the fact that I am more extroverted. And I'm like the Energizer Bunny. I keep going and going, and I drive him nuts as I drive my family nuts because I'm an only child. So everybody's very protective of me, and I drive everybody nuts because I'm constantly on the move, always pushing. But I think I've gotten better and I've recovered the way I have because of my personality. He evens me out. He keeps me stabilized, and I think we complement each other well because of that.
So you mentioned your book kind of at the onset. I love the title, by the way. I love the fact that we have to walk through some choices in life, and it's up to us what we want to choose to do with said choices. But my question is, what was the hardest chapter for you to write?
You know, it's very interesting. I always talked about writing a book, and when I thought I would write a book, I thought it would be more of a stroke book. I thought it would be more of a stroke and more of a resource book. I started writing this book back in January of last year. It actually has been 1 year from start to finish of writing it and then publishing it. And when I started writing it, it really just flowed our whole journey from the stroke, and then I developed epilepsy from the stroke. And then once we moved from Minnesota to Arizona, and we moved to Arizona actually because 2 months after my stroke and we got home, my husband lost his job in the airline industry, so that's why we moved to Arizona. I threw myself into my rehab and to get better, and we then chose 8 years later to adopt a sibling group of 3, brought on more challenges. The title and everything just flowed. And so I think the hardest part, it wasn't really a chapter that was hard. The hardest part was just editing and deciding what to include and what not to include, because there was so much. We've been through so much. And so it was just determining what was important to include and what not to include when you've been through so many things. I really wanted my readers to understand that it's the big picture. It's a big picture that we all have been through challenges, some big, some small. We've been through some huge ones, but in the end, it's our choice of how we react to our challenges that make the difference. And I'm just so thankful that I've had the glasses half full, not half empty attitude to persevere through my challenges that's made the difference.
I wonder what's harder for you, the stroke or becoming an author? What was the bigger challenge?
Oh, that's a very, very good question. I think they're both very different. I think the stroke, God has taught me a lot in both opportunities. The stroke taught me how to persevere through things very unemotionally. And I've just realized that recently, that the stroke gave me the ability to persevere through things on a physical level. I always liked to exercise prior to my stroke. So I kept thinking, if I could just get through this on a physical sense and not an emotional sense, and keep working out and keep exercising, eventually I'll get better. Honestly, on an emotional level, my epilepsy was much harder to deal with because seizures are unpredictable. You can't exercise through seizures. So that was much more difficult on an emotional level to get through. I think that becoming an author in many ways has been harder than the stroke because you're dealing with people and you're dealing with emotions and you're dealing with things on a mental level, an emotional level, and a physical level. So you're dealing with things on all levels. And it has helped me. This writing journey has helped me heal. It's helped me grow as a person. It's helped me develop new relationships, new connections. And so I'm just so grateful for all the opportunities. And I am a humongous fellowship, network, and connection person anyway, but I am very passionate about that because I was not able to do that for so many years. I had the opportunity to be a Bible study leader in our women's ministry, and I'm very passionate about that because that was taken away from me for so many years. I'm much more in tune to people, and that's very important to me now.
I think so often in our lives, we have this kind of presence or this awareness or maybe this struggle. Like this season, I've been calling it a shadow. And a lot of people have pushed on that. They're like, what do you mean by shadow? Like a demon, a thing? I'm like, I don't know. I literally woke up at 3 a.m. one morning and moved my hand and noticed a shadow. And I thought, I wonder how many people have struggled with having shadows in their life. That literally was my thought process. And then as I look at the calendar, Groundhog's Day fell on a Wednesday, which is awesome because that's when the show comes out. So I was like, well, that's perfect. It's ordained now because the groundhog has its shadow and it has its own struggle if it's going to stay in the winter or if it's going to come out into the spring. Every year, it's that juxtaposition.
I love that.
That's my creative mind at work. But I wonder for you, Lori, like with health, with adoptions, with becoming an author, with a wife, with a mom, with all this stuff that you've been kind of piling on you, has there been that moment for you, like a shadowy presence or this thing that's kind of maybe been around you? And if so, maybe speak to that.
I think everybody has their own shadows. I think your shadow is your challenges and how you're going to react to that. And that's where your choices come in. And not that I haven't had dark moments. I definitely have. God has challenged me with my own kids and the adoption world and taking on adopted kids at older ages. They were 6, 8, and 10 has proven to be a challenge in itself. We have gone down the road of mental challenges with them, and I've learned a lot through that. So we all have challenges, both medical, mental. God has opened my eyes in many arenas. And so I think if you want to talk shadows, I think it's the challenges that we all face. And how are we going to handle those challenges? And are we going to handle them with depression? Are we going to handle them with grace? Are we going to handle them with a positive attitude? Are we going to give up? And that is something we have to face on our own on a daily basis. And are we going to look for help when we need it? And that's something we each have to decide.
Hardest part of your recovery effort has been what?
The hardest part of my recovery, I believe, is expectations. I have high expectations for myself. Therefore, I have high expectations for others. And therefore, I'm disappointed. I'm disappointed when I don't get the support I feel I need. I get disappointed when other people don't meet my expectations. I get disappointed when I don't meet my own expectations. And I have learned a lot about that. Your happiness cannot come from circumstances. You need to learn where your happiness is going to come from. And this writing journey has helped me a lot with that. If you can learn not to put all of those expectations in your circumstances, that is helpful. God is your true happiness. And if you can remember that and to not rely on the world and social media, other things for your happiness, you will be in a better place.
Help me for a second. I'm not a medical doctor. I didn't go to medical school. I don't think I can handle that much schooling. If you can, do your best. Help us in layman's terms. What caused this stroke?
Sure. So it was called intracerebral hemorrhagic stroke, which basically in layman's terms was malformation of blood vessels on the right side of my brain. So there was a mass of blood vessels in my brain that were never formed correctly, and no one knew that or detected that. And I had migraines growing up all my life, but back when I was a child, they didn't do CT scans. They didn't do MRIs like they probably would do today. Like I said before, I worked for the airlines in corporate and marketing sales. And 3 weeks prior to my stroke, my husband and I were trying to start a family and had been unsuccessful. We were coming up on our 5-year wedding anniversary, and an opportunity at our church came up for me to switch careers to be their office manager. So I made the choice 3 weeks prior to my stroke to end my corporate career and go work at our church. And that was in January of 2003. And 3 weeks later at the church, I had my stroke. So I thought I was switching my career to help with our family planning, lessen our stress. And I do think now that God was once again putting things in place to save my life, because I was at the church the day of my stroke and not on an airplane or not at a corporate building. So I had my stroke at the church. I got to the hospital. I was unconscious. I had a 5-hour brain surgery to stop the bleed. I woke up 17 days later in a drug-induced coma and had completely lost my left side. I was paralyzed on the left side and was in the hospital for a total of 2 months. I went through one more brain surgery to remove the malformation. It was a 10-hour brain surgery, and that's when my rehab started, and I went home. We actually went to live with my parents because we had stairs at our home. I actually never went back to our first home again. Like I said, my husband lost his job, so then we moved to Arizona, and we started our new life here in Arizona.
Have you ever seen the movie Wizard of Oz?
Yes.
I feel like the tornado just kind of whipped the house around and dropped you into Oz, but we scratched out the O and we put an A in there and just AZ.
Good analogy.
What a whirlwind.
It was a whirlwind, and what was difficult actually about the move to Arizona was that no one knew me. That was one of the difficult parts, is starting over. No one knew the real me. So we had to start a whole friend group over again, only knowing the disability me. So everybody had to get to know the new me. And when you have a disability and people see you only on the outside, and they have to get to know you on the inside. And one of my future goals is to start my own podcast in the future for stroke survivors, because many times when you have a brain injury or a stroke, you're the same person on the inside, just a little different on the outside, and people don't know that. So I'd like to get a voice and a place for people to express their stories and express themselves.
I know some people that can help you.
Wonderful.
What I'm wondering about with you in the stroke, if we can walk down this road together.
Yes.
You mentioned that you had to start a whole new friend group, that this new friend group only saw you as this stroke individual, post-stroke, if you will. What do you remember from that old life that is different from today?
Oh, that's a good question. The old life was, I was much more independent. I've gotten a lot of my independence back now. However, I know everybody worries about me, so I have to be much more observant about my family being concerned about me. I used to be much more independent and carefree. And I think that comes with age, though. You know, you're more aware anyway as you get older of your surroundings. I'm more careful than I used to be. I have to be. You know, my balance obviously is not what it was, and I'm just not as capable as I used to be. I still work out just as much as I used to be. Workout is a huge part of my life. I still go to the fitness center. I'm probably the youngest member of the senior citizens group when I go work out. So I still work out as much as I possibly can, both at home and at the fitness center. So I keep actively involved as much as I can, working out and at rehab. I still am involved at church, like I said, in the women's ministry. So I do a lot of the same activities that I did before. I'm just much more in tune to priorities than I was before. I was much more career oriented in my younger age prior to my stroke, and I'm much more in tune now to friend groups and what's important in the long term in life.
You know, I know for me, when tragedy strikes, when heartache happens, when failures do come, because they do, much like your book, I have a choice. I can play the blame game. I can blame others. I can blame God. I can blame myself. I can play that blame game. I can blame whoever, the driver in front of me, whatever. But for you, have you ever allowed yourself to to play that blame game with God?
No, I haven't actually. I haven't blamed God at all because it's not God's fault. It just happened. I think it's just part of my personality not to blame. I think part of God's way of helping me cope with things has helped me shut things off emotionally, like I said, and look at things from a physical standpoint. He has protected me from getting depressed, playing the blame game, getting over emotional about things. I think that's God's way of protecting me.
But there were those cynics, other side of the coin people that would look at your story, look at your love affair with God, look at your devotion, your passion, and they would point at that and they would say, well, if this God is so loving, if this God is so amazing, if this God is so great, he could heal you at this moment and he could put you back to 21-year-old Lori.
He could, but then he wouldn't have used me the way he has. That's true. He could. And I wouldn't be the person I am today. I wouldn't have affected all the people that I have come across, and I wouldn't have grown to be the person that I am today. And so, yes, he probably would have possibly missed some phenomenal opportunities. I have been mentored by some phenomenal women, and I have grown to appreciate and love some seasoned women in my church and appreciate the older generation that I would not have taken the time to love and appreciate that generation as much as I do. I don't think I had been in the position that I am. I don't think I would take the time and have the perspective that I do for people with disabilities or, like I said, the older generation. Necessarily, I would probably be more on the fast track of sales and marketing and pushing. And I still push myself very hard and drive my family nuts with my constant agenda, but I would do it even more. And so I think for those that would have that cynic attitude, I think God has a plan for everybody. And it's you keeping your eyes on God and his plan is the key. I'll share with you now. I was not supposed to have this podcast opportunity with you today. I should be in surgery right now. Back in January, they found a cyst that will cause me to have a surgery that was supposed to happen today. And they postponed my surgery till April. The call came in on Sunday. So had I had the surgery today, you and I would never have the opportunity to have this podcast. So I believe God has a plan for everything. My goal is to keep my eyes on him. Whatever his plan is, I am in obedience to him and on a mission to use my story, bring hope and encouragement to others. And I think if we will continue to do that and keep looking out for each other and trying to help each other in our world will be a much better place.
I do believe there is a reason for everything. I don't think things just happen by just accidental coincidences and serendipitous moments. I mean, it's fun in Hollywood. It's fun on a Hallmark movie. You know, the big time executives goes back to her hometown and finds the boyfriend that was, her boyfriend, but she left him because he didn't want to leave whatever. Those movies make me laugh all the time. But I do believe things happen for a reason. But along your journey between, again, the stroke, the kids, the career, all of that, what has been the hardest choice for you to step out and do?
I think the hardest thing is to continue to be confident and being vulnerable, putting yourself out there and not worrying about what other people think and not worrying about what's going to happen. Being true to yourself, being true to your mission. That's hard because we're human. We only have one chance to live and we need to make the best of it. And we need to stay true to ourselves and true to what we want our legacy to be.
As a mom, what do you hope that they see in you and learn from you and maybe take on in their life and that they remember forever?
I hope they learn resiliency. I hope that they learn that even though life was hard before they came to our family, they have a choice to make. There will always be challenges. Life is not easy. I hope they will know that they're always loved, they're always supported, and someone always has their back even when they don't think so. Life is just tough. They will always have a forever family, but they will always have a choice. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink, and we will always love them. It's their choice of how to live.
But don't you hope they grab something from you, like a trait?
I do. But I think that's the hardest thing as a parent, especially when you don't get them as your own from the very beginning and you can't start from the very beginning. You can only do so much. I hope that if nothing else, they can learn the resiliency and the ability to just push and understand that life's not always fair, and that we haven't had it easy, and they don't have parents that have had the easiest life, but we've made the choice to persevere, and we made the choice to continue loving, and they have parents that have a strong marriage and love each other, and I hope we've set a good example for that.
You mentioned vulnerability. Why is vulnerability such a key element to you feel like your life and maybe even your foundation?
I think it's very important to be vulnerable and emotional to others, because in this world there's so much fakeness. There's so much when you think of social media and you think of TV, everything out there, there's such a sense of non-reality. I was off social media for such a long time because all I saw when I went on was happiness, and my life was not happy. It was a hard, lonely journey for years with the stroke and the epilepsy and the adoption parenting. I purposely had to get off social media because I couldn't handle going on and seeing all those happy people when my life was not happy. I just couldn't handle that. And when I came back on as an author, because I was strongly encouraged to make a platform and to be more involved on social media, I did see a difference. And part of it, I think, is the people that I've chosen to friend and the people I've chosen to be around. But I see a new vulnerability on social media, and I've taken a step back and tried to learn from the people that I am associating with, and those that are vulnerable and willing to put themselves out there, their emotions. I want to be one of those people. I want to be one of those encouragers, not just one that shows happy pictures of my family, but one that can encourage others. And I think if you can be vulnerable with your emotions and your feelings, then other people will gravitate towards you and see you as a human being.
I think that's good stuff. I think authenticity is lost. I think we want it. We talk about it like we, talk about loving our wives better, loving our husbands better, loving our kids better. But I think true authenticity is such a fainted, gassy thing. We can see it. We can look at it, the wind almost, but we can't catch it and grab it.
It's hard, isn't it?
I think it is. And I think if you're doing that and walking that out, I think that's tremendous.
Oh, thank you. It's a hard line because I want to be real, but I also want to be positive. And so it's a hard line of being real and positive.
So somebody sent me this a while back, and I wanted to get your thoughts on it. So it says, "For God called me to do good, even if it means suffering, just as Christ suffered for me. He is my example, and I must follow in his footsteps." What are your thoughts on that?
That's good. That's hard. It's hard to follow in Christ's footsteps, but that's what we're called to do as Christians. Part of what we're called to do. We're called to take up the cross daily and follow. And I think part of following him is being in his word and being held accountable, being around other Christians, being nurtured, being a part of a body, keeping our eyes on God and what his mission is for us, whatever that means. I think living for him and living the life he wants us to live.
I don't know about you. When I grew up in the church, I really thought the Christian life was going to be easy. Like I really did. Like I thought, okay, Jesus is in my heart. He's down deep in my heart. Got the joy down deep in my heart. The devil's not going to take it away. Oh, no, he's not. And I realized that this world is so hard and so challenging.
Yes.
And as a guy, I hate to admit this on my own show, there are times I have to shed some tears even because I'm so mad or hurt or disappointed or whatever. But what advice would you give me as a friend? Hey, even though it's hard, even though it's been challenging, what should I choose to do?
I think that's tough because you've been hurt. And I think a lot of people that have grown up in the church, they have that feeling and that misconception that it's all going to be perfect. It's all going to be okay. And then they're disappointed. Life isn't easy. It's not about easy. It's just about, getting through the best we can. And I think that's the fallacy. I think the fallacy is that we become Christians, we're saved, and we have accepted Christ, so now we're going to have a perfect life. No, God didn't come to save us to give us a perfect life. He came to save us to wash away our sins. It's so much more than that, our choice of how we live. But my encouragement to you and to anybody listening is depend on other Christians, depend on other believers to be your support system, to be there for you, to find the people that you can count on. And if people disappoint you, keep looking, because there's people out there that will stand by you. But it's not about a feeling. And I think that's the big misconception, is that Christianity, accepting Christ, is a feeling. It's not a feeling. It's a choice. It's a daily decision of how you're going to live your life.
I love that. I think that's some great perspective to think about, because I think in everything in life, you have a choice. You absolutely 100% have a choice. You can choose to listen, you can choose to follow, you can choose to submit, or you can choose not to. And that's the best part about life, is it truly is a choice. So Lori, I want to give you an opportunity right now. If people are curious about the book, how can they get their hands on it? Where can they go to get it? Where are some great places they can go?
Yes, thank you. I really appreciate you asking that. So it became available on Friday, March 11th. It is available on barnesandnoble.com. It's available at Amazon.com. It's available at Walmart.com. It's available at Christianbook.com. And it's also available on my website at LoriVober.com.
Lori, I know you've been juggling a lot. You actually forgot one place that it's also available that they can go and get it. Do you know where that is? I will help you. They can also go to opspodcast.com/books that we love. They can also go there. It'll be towards the top of our page there. And so you will be featured there as well. So if they didn't get all of those places, which I don't know how they couldn't, because there are some amazing places there and places people normally shop. They're used to hearing those names.
Wonderful.
They can also go there.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Lori, you're amazing. Thank you for giving us some moments today. I'm super excited that we had you on, and I hope you had a good time.
I did. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
I've heard you're highly competitive. Did research get that wrong, or are you kind of highly super competitive?
I'm pretty competitive.
So we play this game at the end of our show. It's called Senseless. I know you're probably not a North Carolina fan, but everyone should be after they're on the show, right? They should cheer for them at least once.
Well, I did live in North Carolina for a while, so you're in luck.
How close were you to this little place called Chapel Hill? Do you remember how close you were?
I lived in Durham, North Carolina for 5 years.
You lived in Durham?
I did.
I hate that word.
Sorry.
As I hate all Montagues and the... Sorry. It's a little Romeo and Juliet, I think. You lived in Durham? How did that sneak past the radar?
I should have mentioned that since, you do have a UNC
shirt on. I have a hat on. I have the flag behind. I mean, it's bad here. Look, I got jerseys on the wall.
Well, I kind of consider myself a Texan because I went to high school and college in Texas. So I kind of consider myself Texas. But I was born in Georgia and grew up on the East Coast. So I lived in North Carolina, Alabama.
Okay, I need to know this, though. Did you ever cheer for the Blue Devils while you lived in Durham? You don't want to answer, do you? This is a choice.
I'm not going to answer.
I feel like that's a yes.
Because you're a UNC fan. You're
on Zoom. Just blink twice if you're in a safe space.
I have to say, I did love Duke. I'm sorry. I did. But I did like the Tar Heels, too. So, I mean, I just loved basketball. I love basketball.
Listen, you can't like them both. But how can you like the devil and talk about Jesus at the same time?
Okay, but I really like you a lot, so I'll say I like you.
All right.
Okay.
All right, thank you. All right, so I got my North Carolina cup here, not to be confused with the Duke Blue Devil cup. Just saying,
right?
Because they don't sell those because it's garbage. Nothing from that school is good. Nothing. Anyway, I'm going to roll for you. Are you okay if I roll on your behalf? You trust me enough to do that? All right, thank you. All right, question number 2 is this. This is our game we called Senseless. There's proof. It is a blue 2, a light blue 2, not a royal blue 2. And it's this. Who is touching your life right now?
Who is touching my life?
Yeah, who is touching your life right now?
Well, God number 1, husband number 2.
Why are those elements and those people, why are they so important for them touching your life right now?
Because I think as a Christian, God always needs to come number one. My strength, if we don't put him number one, I just think he needs to be number one. He needs to be the one who grounds us. My husband and I both feel strongly about that. And I'm thankful that he's also a Christian and that we're on the same page on that. As we've talked about before, my husband's number two definitely in my life. He's my rock. So grateful for him. We've always made sure that he comes before the kids, family, friends. So he obviously is number two. As an only child, close to my parents, they live about 5 minutes away, so we see them a lot. So when I say family, I include my parents as that. And then friends are also very important. Alluded to that with connection and fellowship. So there's a lot of people touching right now.
Fantastic. I do believe that everyone needs someone pouring into them as they're pouring into someone else. Would you agree with that statement as well?
I do. I definitely do. And I have a mentor in my life I got about 2 years ago that we talk once a week, and that has been an amazing relationship also. And so I believe you need people younger in your life, you need people older in your life that you can pour into and that can pour into you. And I think the pandemic has been a huge struggle for all of us with the connection standpoint. And I think if there's one takeaway I have gotten in this writing journey that has helped me is the connections, the new connections that I've made with other people. And I'm hoping as the book takes off and my mission continues, my connections also flourish. And that is one of my biggest things, is just connecting with others and helping others the best I can.
That's fantastic. Lori, again, thank you so much for coming on. We really appreciate it.
Oh, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much.
Guys and gals, kids and campers alike. How about that in there, right? Snuck that in on us like she lived and rooted devils. But it got me thinking, as silly as this may sound, we all have a choice. And so many times in life, we are faced with choices. We can choose to remain in the shadow, or we can choose not to remain in the shadow. We continue to choose the negative voices in our lives, or we can surround ourselves with some positive voices in our life. It really is a choice. And I think we as Americans, we love that word choice. We love the fact we celebrate, we march on, we campaign, we put up signs and posters for choices. We all want that choice. But the question is, are we making the right choice? Now, is Lori's choices, are they the right choices? Well, they are for her. They might also be for me. But today I want to ask you a question as we get out of here, and that's this question. What has been your biggest choice of late? What is that? Think about that for a second. What decision have you made that's like, man, that was a big choice? And now as you think about that choice, was it the right choice? Did it fit for what you needed to have happen? And if it didn't, why didn't? I'd love to know that. If you're willing to share, I would absolutely 100% love to know that. So you can let me know. opspodcast.com is a great place to let me know that at. You can leave a message there. You can also leave a voicemail there. We'd love to hear that. You can also reach out to us on social media at OPS Podcast Show under Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We'd love to know that as well over there. And just before we go, I want you to remember this. Don't ever forget. Please do not ever forget this. Remember, when you walk in other people's shoes, you really do get a different perspective on life. Thank you so much for listening, and stay tuned until next week when we walk in other people's shoes.